Good afternoon, everyone. It is November 28th. Going to talk about the war between Russia and Ukraine. I talked about Crimea a bit yesterday, so we're going to focus on other parts of the battlefield, starting in the northern part, in the Kharkiv region, where Russian troops are trying to push towards Kupiansk. This has been an effort that Russia has been taking for the past year since they lost it after the fall of the whole Kharkiv region earlier in the war. Now, they have made advances towards Sinkivka, which is right here. It's just a small area here, and I can actually zoom in for you guys so you can see not major advances, just very small advances as they push towards Sinkivka en route to Kupiansk, which is right here. There's a river that runs right here. This is where they ideally want to push the front line to. They want to push the front line to the banks of the Osko River right there. And it is seen as strategically important because this river, holding this river area, means that they can start pushing more incursions with their logistics across the river and take the crossroads of Kupiansk. Interestingly, the Ukrainians see this as a tactically significant region as well and have pushed a lot more of their Western supplied equipment, including reports of U.S. Abrams tanks operating in this sector, but that remains unconfirmed, and I haven't seen any footage yet of that. These are just reports coming from the local reporting it in the area. Now, the control over this area influences a broader military dynamic because, as you can see, zooming out on the area, pushing into Kupiansk eliminates a critical crossroads right here. This crossroads services a north-south sector that feeds the front line. And if the Russians were able to take Kupiansk, it pushes a lot of the supplies down through Borovo, which is right here, which means that it takes a bit longer for them to get to the front line. Now, moving south to Bakhmut, which I actually haven't talked about in a while, two significant situations have arisen as Russia has made gains near Kromova right here as they've pushed this outward and also pushed this small little area outward along this highway that runs to Bakhmut as they try to take Ivanivske right here. Now, Russians also are improving their fighting positions along this route right here outside of Klitschkiivka. And there is really a concerted effort to maintain or bolster defenses surrounding Bakhmut rather than take these forces and move them towards a more decisive area of Avdiivka or even Kupiansk or Kherson. So Bakhmut still remains very important, at least politically, if not strategically, for the Russians at this point. Now we'll move further south to Avdiivka, which is where a significant portion of the fighting has been taking place. As you remember, I talked about the double pincher move. The Russians were attempting to surround Avdiivka, and it's really called a double envelopment, but they were largely unsuccessful, having only taken about this much ground recently and jutting out this little spot here in response to the Ukrainians' push this way. Now, in an effort to try to have more of a significant drive towards Avdiivka, the Russians have actually concentrated forces on a direct attack here and here. This zone right here is the industrial zone, and this is important because Ukrainians and the Telegram channels out of Ukraine have said that Ukrainians have retreated from the southern parts of the industrial zone back towards the more suburban and commercial areas of Avdiivka. The reason this is significant is because this sits right here on a hill that provides overwatch to the rest of the city. So if Russia were able to take all of this, they would have a tactical advantage in seeing what's going on in the city, at least somewhat. The Ukrainian Telegram channels have said that the industrial zone here has not been taken. It is still considered a gray zone, but that Russia has made advances into the southern and eastern parts of that industrial zone. That being said, the Russians are losing an astonishing amount of people here every day. Somewhere between 400 to 600 per day is the consensus amongst experts in this space, with some Ukrainian estimates claiming that this particularly foolish attack on Avdiivka has cost Russia 1,000 troops per day over the last 48 hours. Russia continues to backfill with a steady flow of untrained conscripts, inmates, debtors seeking to write off their debt by going to war, and homeless that are secretly gathered in Russia and sent off to Ukraine. Now we'll move over to the Zaporizhia front, which is over here. The Ukrainians have gained a pretty good chunk of territory along this highway that runs here, moving this way to the west of Robotyne in an effort to create more of a bolstered position for their flanks in order to drive further southward deeper into Russian territory. So currently the Ukrainian forces are pushing outwards to secure flanks, and they have seen successes near Robotyne heading towards Kopani here, as well as Rivne here. And then finally, we will move towards Kherson, where we've seen this bridgehead develop from the Ukrainian forces, focusing specifically on Krinky right here. The Ukrainian forces are deploying reinforcements and growing the bridgehead in a lateral manner to the river here. Their primary objective is to advance deeper into the forested areas around the river, which offers better cover and allows them to establish a more solid foothold. Now, Ukrainian forces have switched to heavy drone assaults and artillery to cover the movements of their forces. Interestingly, one of the heavy assault drones is named Baba Yaga, which means boogeyman for those of you that have watched the John Wick movies. These are destroying Russian pieces of equipment, artillery, and vehicles in the area. Ukrainian forces continue to exert control over a highway that runs parallel to the river and disrupting their ground line of communication for logistics between the front line in a lateral manner here. However, Russian logistics still can use this highway deeper, but this highway here, this E97, has become somewhat precarious because there are some areas where they can see movements of Russians on this road and have called for fire, destroying Russian logistics. There are also Ukrainian resistance fighters that are part of the non-military apparatus in the region, helping the Ukrainian military find and destroy targets. Russian soldiers in Krinky expressed frustration with their commanders, particularly Colonel Vladko, for misrepresenting the stability of the situation to higher ups. This is a very volatile situation for the Russians. He is unable, because he's misrepresenting how badly it is for Russia in this region, they are not able to gain adequate reinforcements, and this has led to a high casualty rate and ammunition rationing amongst the troops here, especially since Russia has been focused heavily on Avdiivka and Bakhmut. Some of the troops have refused orders to assault some of the islands that are within the river that the Ukrainians have gained a foothold on, because it is essentially a death sentence for them, and they demand that they will only assault those if Colonel Vladko himself decides to take lead on the operations. And that is it for what's going on around the battlefield. Have a good day, everyone.